EA is known for two things: making sports games every year, even to the detriment of the product, and gambling in the form of loot boxes. But what if they leaned in to the randomness of loot boxes? What if there was an entire game built around the concept of random? Well, today we look at a game set in a twisted fairy tale with a unique setting and interesting characters, where it's all about the roll of the dice. But before I go any further, welcome to Stay Tuned on Gaming. I'm your host Damien, where we get to talk about video games for as long as I want. And today, we're going to be talking about the dice-based game, Lost in Random. Let's get into the game. Now, before we go any further, let's talk about EA Originals. Now, if you don't know what the EA Originals program is, it was launched in 2015 and it was an initiative by EA that was designed to help and support indie game developers, allowing EA to create games that didn't feel like EA titles while having a much smaller budget. EA would provide these developers with funding, marketing, and even distribution, while the developers will have complete freedom on whatever game they wanted to make. And I have to say, this program has been pretty successful. It includes titles like A Way Out, It Takes Two, Unravel, and today's game, Lost in Random. Lost in Random is an action-adventure game developed by Zoink and published by EA. It tells the story of a young girl named Eva and her sister Rod, set in a dark, twisted kingdom of random, where all the citizens' fate is decided by the roll of the cursed dice ruled by an evil queen. When a child turns the age of 12, the queen will roll her dice and decide their fate. When it's time for Evan's sister to roll, she rolls a 6 and is taken away by the queen. Now, Evan, filled to reunite her family, will begin a quest that will take her across all the 6 realms of random, but she will not be alone on this journey, as she will meet a sentient dice named Dicey. Together, they will encounter many interesting characters, fight hordes of the Queen's army, and understand the randomness of life. The story of Lost in Random is fantastic. It's really well done. It's not only has some great writing, but it has great character development, fantastic lore, and world building, and it always keeps the player guessing on what's going to happen next. It's a dark tale, but humorous, heartwarming, and even sad at points. It really does work. And the characters that you meet along the way and the different realms of random that you visit will be very memorable. I have to give it down to the characters. I love Evan. She's a fantastic protagonist, and as she gets closer to trying to save her sister, she gets to see her own fears, her strengths, and actually do some real good growth throughout the game. But not only is she good, the supporting cast of characters is also really good. You've got Nanny Fortuna, the evil queen, the many other characters you meet like Manny Dex, the walking card store, or Seymour, who's always willing to help, and of course, your loyal companion that helps you along the way, Dicey. All of that just brings together this really good story. And then the setting. Random is a place all about the roll of the dice, and every stage of random representing one number on the dice is fantastic. I love it. It just is so good. I wanted to talk to everybody. I wanted to see everything. There was nothing I wanted to miss in this game when it comes to just giving me bits of story. And then it comes to the lore and world building, which is also really well done. A lot has happened in Random before the Queen got to power, and so you get to learn about all of this. And that is fantastic as well. Like, I'd say a tip is talk to everybody. Talk to as much people as you can, because they always drip feed you some really cool or interesting lore. And it's not only just the characters you meet, but every character in the different realms of Random, they are also really memorable that you have to say. I loved this story. It was really well paced. It was really memorable. And from the moment I played it, I was like, this story is really good. Overall, it's fantastic. Couple this with some really good voice acting. I especially loved all the voice acting in this game. A lot of the lines are actually voiced, which surprised me. The only ones that aren't is Evan. Sometimes she doesn't speak at all in conversations, like normal conversations that you have with characters that are just off to the side. You speak to them and she doesn't talk, which is sometimes weird. So when you do hear her, you're like, oh my god, I forgot. She has a voice. But there's so many cool stuff. I can tell you right now, while this normal standard setting of I have to go save my sister is there, what they do with it is really unique. I recommend anyone to really play this game. It's really good when it comes to story. It will always be a memorable one for me, and it's gonna be one I'm probably gonna come back to just to experience this game's story. Now let's talk about the graphics. The world of Random has this Tim Burton aesthetic to it, and you can tell it right away. It has this dark and whimsical visuals, just like the story. Everything about this game is visually different than anything I've seen in other games, and if you've watched any of Tim Burton's films, it immediately brings you into it. Each realm of Random is different and memorable. You've got the junk-filled world of Oneburg, where all of Random's trash is gathered, to the duality of Two Town, where not only the people have two different personalities, but they're also building a second town. The war-ridden Freedom, where triplets are fighting for control of the area. Forburg, which is built on the ruins of the no-dice war, where gambling can get you everything or lose you everything. Five Tropolis is filled with factories and mechanics, home to the five card makers, and Sixtopia is the ultimate paradise, the home to the queen, where everyone wants to be. All of this is just brings in the game's story, and the visuals just help it. I loved all the small unique details about each realm. I love going into every nook and cranny. I love seeing how they represented one another and how you could really see that this is a lived-in world where people are standing around talking, but you can see what has happened and the history of these places. They were all cool, and it was really amazing to see. The character designs are also very unique. While I didn't care so much for the boring suits of armor enemies, when it came to the NPCs, they were really cool. They were so different to look at. Some people's mouths are like upside down. Some people are tall. Some people don't even really speak. And it's just so crazy. One of my favorite places, I think, was Forburg. I really liked that, but I liked it a lot. I liked Forburg the most, I have to say. Forburg was really, really good. It was just such an interesting place to run around because it's filled with people all trying to, gamble. And this game is basically that. And then you have such as designs for, the queen, which I really love the queen's design in this. I love the boss's designs. I love the way you have the designs for certain characters, just really all different. You can't really say that there was a character that isn't memorable, especially our main cast, and then everyone else is very memorable. Like Seymour he's like this giant guy and he's got 3 eyes, but he's a very memorable person. Even now talking about him, I can remember all the details about him. I especially love Manny Dex. He's a character that's always following you around, and he makes the cards for that you use in the game. And just to see every single time you walk up, the animation plays like boom. There's the animation, you get to see all the cards and everything. Really, really well done. Now, it's not perfect. The game has some lip syncing issues, and some animes don't play out the best, but it's memorable and everything else. Like, it's not a game where I would say, this reminds me of another game. Nothing of that is here. The graphics rule in here might not be top tier amazing graphics, but they are amazing to look at. Lost in Random's gameplay is very different. Lost in Random features a unique dice-based combat system with deck-building elements. Everything revolves around the roll of the dice. Players will collect gems, which will then give you energy to draw cards. When you've drawn enough cards or collected enough energy, you can roll your dice. The number on the dice determines your energy, and each card has a number attached to it, and the dice number will determine if you can use that card. And this system is really good. There's a lot I like about it. There are some issues, but there's a lot I like about this gameplay system. The use of randomness really makes this game never get bored in the gameplay department, because you never know what you're going to roll. If you take a normal card game, you will always know how much energy you'll have. But not with this game. You don't know if you're going to roll 1 or 6. And you can build a deck where you have cards that just have 3, and then you roll 1, and you never get to choose any of those cards. If you can't play any cards, they're discarded, and you now have to begin again and throw again. If you do throw your dice, you then go into like this stasis, where you can take a number of times to choose the card you want, what you want to play, how you want to use that card, and then you throw away the rest you aren't going to use, and then the game returns to normal. You can even hit enemies during this time, so you can even gain an upper hand on them. Now, what are the cards you're going to use? Well, there are 5 types. weapon, which is swords, spears, hammers, and bows. Hazards, which are traps mostly, like hazards you can put on the battlefield. Defense is shield. Damage, I would say, is like debuffing enemies, like cursing or poisoning them. And then cheat is to make things into your advantage. You can build a deck of 15 of these cards, and you can get cards from your friendly store Manny decks. Buying these cards will allow you to get a reward. Like if you buy enough from him, it gives you a reward like a pin, which you can then use to make sure those cards aren't thrown away if you don't use them. Or you can get some loot boxes to open up more cards. You can also gain cards from battle or side quests. Deck building and experimenting with the different cards you have is fantastically fun. There's not a lot to choose from, but it's really fun to try to build a deck that is the most useful for you in any combat situation. You can have 3 different types of weapons. You can build a deck with just weapons. You can have multiple copies of the same card or just play one. And in some cases, it actually is a benefit to play copies of the same card, such as for weapons. Now, once you do choose a weapon, it has a durability attached to it and a normal combo system, like square, 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 and then you can hold in square for like a powered attack. And each one does something different. Like the hammer, you go into a swinging motion. The spear, you basically fly as a drill. All of these are really great. But here comes the kicker. If you have 2 of the same cards and you play it, you not only restore that card's durability, such as let's say my spear was almost dead and I played another spear card, I regain the durability and I make the weapon stronger. For bows, I usually get 10 arrows, but if I play another bow card, I get 20 instead. This actually makes you want to draw cards and figure out what is best for you. Now, is it 100% perfect? No, but the randomness, it just makes it really fun. The cheat cards are also really good because some of them give you more energy or they can help you on the game boards. Now, what are those? The game boards is basically a place where you have this gigantic game board and you have to move the game piece to the end of the game board. This time around, your dice will not only give you energy, but will move that game piece. Once you reach the end with the game piece, you win the game. And when the thing is, wherever the game piece lands can be helpful or a hindrance. Like it can send down bombers which you can shoot to blow up enemies, or it can summon enemies. Think of it as a gigantic like horde mode until you get to the end with the game piece. So it's you fighting enemies and trying to get the game piece not only to land on a good spot, but land on a spot where you know that I need to roll. And sometimes it can be really bad, like rolling ones. Like one time I just rolled like 4 ones in a row. So that makes the game fun, exciting, and sometimes also very frustrating. Look, this game is good with its combat, but it's not like C or B all. It's not like the most advanced combo systems of all time. But what is here is fun. Now, I do have some issues with this game. First of all, every combat will start the same. You start with no energy and no cards in hand. And so you have to shoot the gems or collect gems from the battlefield. Now, enemies will always have gems on them, and you have to shoot them with your trusty slingshot. The problem I have is sometimes it takes a while for these to show up, and you will have to spend a good minute or two collecting just a couple of gems to get some cards in your hand so you can throw them. As for enemy designs, they are all very cool. There's a lot of enemies when it comes to the variety. Some will shoot you from far, some will fly, some will just be heavy bricks, some will be big, some will be super fast. This does keep you on your toes because they never just give you one enemy. Later on, they give you like 2 or 3 enemies you have to deal with, so you always are moving. You also do have a dodge that you can use to go through enemies and even knock out their gems, and it always can get you out of a sticky situation. But I do have an issue with some of the game's enemies. They're all too easy. At most, I only died once or twice, mostly because I wanted to see what happened if I did die. Other than that, I hardly ever died. It was always me just being able to outsmart the enemies or just be really good at dice throwing sometimes. But it's just way too easy. The game only has 2 difficulties, story and normal, and I found that it's way too easy even to play normal. I would have liked it if they gave you like some difficulty, and don't get me wrong, you can get stun lock, but if you get a potion ability, like a potion card and heal up, it will heal you to full. Like literally heal you to full. Also, getting cards outside of like the card store, you can buy every card that is available in the game from the card store. And sometimes you can get lucky by getting a card you haven't gotten yet, but most of the time you've probably already bought it. Side quests in the game are pretty standard. You go here, do this. Sometimes there be something interesting. As for puzzles, you do get them outside of the game, but they're nothing crazy, nothing like super difficult, very easy. You mostly get them to unlock this, to get collect the storybook pages, which is lore items that tells you the past of random. These are actually pretty cool. They actually have voice acting attached to them. They sound like audiobooks. Really, really fantastic. What's great is that you'll have a map that will tell you everything you need to do in the area, like how many cards you can collect, number of side quests, and how many storybooks, which I really did find really good to have all around. Then it comes to the pacing of this game. For me, it's hit or miss. For me, there's just not enough things, even pacing, because the game is uneven in its gameplay and its story department. Sometimes you'll have normal fights, right? Normal fights in battle will take 10 minutes, maybe 15 or 20. Other than that, you can spend like a good 30 to 40 minutes just doing story, and then you have another fight that lasts 15 minutes, and then you out, and I have another 30-minute talk time. It can be pretty boring, especially just running around in this area, and then you fight, then you do more running around than ever before. So it can be uneven. But again, what is good with the combat and its gameplay system is just the randomness of it. I love throwing a dice, not knowing what's going to happen. It always keeps you on your toes. It's like a strategy game without knowing what you have to do next turn, because everyone is always moving. It's really, really good. I recommend, if you haven't played Lost in Random, to check out his gameplay. It's unlike anything I've played, but also similar to certain things. I just wish they gave you a gun or something like that, because I usually didn't have a lot of bow and arrow items. And later down the line, I was like, well, I definitely need to get bow and arrow in it. And the bow and arrow is like one of the strongest in the game. The one that does explosive arrows is like the strongest in the game. I also did have an issue with the gameplay in the beginning of the game. Because Dicey doesn't have all his pips, you can't really experiment as much as you want in the beginning of the game, because he only has like number 1 and number 2. Through the story, you get more pips. But once you finally get 3, 4, and 5, the game really starts to open up and makes the combat way more fun. Overall, it's a fun system that I had a good time with. Definitely one I will remember for a long time. Overall, Lost in Random is a fantastic small game that is memorable, exciting, and has a fantastic gameplay system that never had me bored. I fell in love with Lost in Random the moment I started it, and I never stopped playing it as the journey continued. I would implore you, if you want to play Lost in Random, go and check it out. You can probably find it for a good price. I know it's on EA Access, so maybe you can get it through Game Pass. And if you do want to platinum the game, it's pretty simple. The game isn't too long, 10 to 15 hours. It's a small little ride, and I wish I get to play more of it. I would love to see what more Zoink has done. I didn't look up on them before I wrote this review. I just said, let me just talk about this game because I really wanted to talk about Lost in Random. Lost in Random is fantastic. A 10 out of 10 in my opinion. Has some issues with the pacing and some of the combat and even some animation, but it doesn't deny that this is a really good game with a unique setting and a great story. And at the end of the day, you must remember one thing: random rules.
It's not up to you to wage a war. It's whatever the dice decides. Kiss 'em before you toss 'em.